Now, why did you
Yeah.
choose the word heat for this episode? Was that word
Everything I
you?
everything I fucking do, man, it's got to do with heat. That's been a big
Yeah,
theme for me forever. Acts that we represent, they got to have a level of heat with them.
gotta bring the heat.
Got to bring the heat, man. And then heat also for me is like the fuel that really pushes people. Like you got to have a fire under your ass to be in this business. Like you
Hmm.
really, and listen, I know like, people can sit there and say all they want, like, well, you're not a comedian. That's the fucking point, is that I'm
Yeah.
not a comedian. I don't give a fuck about going out and being funny. That's your job. My job is to make you better at what you do and to
Hmm.
give you opportunities that maybe you don't have.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming on the show. I'll
My
just do a
pleasure,
little
man.
notes off the top for everybody watching. If you want these episodes ad free before anyone else, you got to go to patreon.com/backslash the Johnny Rogers. It's the only way to get it. But today on the show, I have Jake Hirsch. Hirsch, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You got it.
Perfect. So you're a talent manager and you own talent agency Williams and Hirsch. You've combined with Kyra Williams, which is genius move. She's a force in and of herself. So that's good business move there, my friend. And then you
Yeah,
also own and operate, is it the House of Comedy in
I'm a
BC?
partner. Yeah,
Partner,
yeah,
partner in
co-owner.
House
Yeah,
Comedy. Nice.
you bet.
Other than that, do you want to give the people listening a little like background about like who you are and how you got into the comedy business?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, so I'll try to not bore anybody with it. But
No, we got time, man. That's what podcasts are all
we
about.
got that.
We're not going to
Awesome,
cut
man.
away to commercial.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, Johnny. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I've obviously seen all the interviews that you've been doing, and looks like you've got a really great variety of guests that have come on, and some real heavy hitters, man. So I'm really honored to be here. So um, yeah, I mean, comedy has was not really my start, to be honest with you. I mean, I was in law enforcement for about 15 years before this, and kind of got into it by chance. Um, I was I'm American, so I was actually working in law enforcement down in Texas, actually Houston, Texas, and I started getting into podcasting. I ended up leaving my job down there. I knew I needed a change, and I was really good at interrogation, really good at interviews. I started a podcast and started
Smart.
interviewing people. Yeah, and thought there would be a good way for me to kind of segue into interviewing people, obviously professionally, and didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest with you, man. It was kind of trial by fire and reaching out to just random people who I really admired in the business. My intention was never really to get into the entertainment business, so to speak, but um, it really started with that podcast. I reached out. One of my big first interviews with was oh man, Seth MacFarlane's partner, writing partner, and Alec. Oh man, it's going to look bad now. I forgot his name. Anyway, he's like the co-creator. Does voices. He's in a lot of Seth MacFarlane creations and stuff like that. But I reached out and it was kind of like a fake it until you make it. I was just kind of reaching out to people, going, "Hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast," and they didn't really know who the hell I was, but I just kind of pretended like I had a big audience, and more people were saying yes. So um, I ended up moving to Canada, and I reached out. I saw Mark Breslin was coming to town, and I actually reached out to just random to I think it was Mark's assistant at the time, or somebody that worked at the PXX office. It was probably it was probably Kira, but I reached out to somebody there, and I said, "Listen, Mark's going to be in town. I'd love the opportunity to sit down with this guy. I mean, obviously the legacy that he's got and the history in the business, and someone I really respected." And I sat down with Mark, and it was supposed to go for like an hour, I think, or like 45 minutes. Ended up going like 2 hours. We just like super, hit it off. And that was really, I would say, my first step into comedy. And, I did a little stand up for like probably 3 or 4 months just to kind of see what that was like and to kind of try to help, probably not only just identify, but also, if you're going to be interviewing people that are in the comedy game, I kind of wanted to get a sense of like what they were going through and
Hmm.
what trials and tribulations that they had going on, and what it was like to get up in front of an audience like that and bomb or do well or whatever it was. So I did a little bit of stand up for like, 3 or 4 months, went on the road. And But it was really that initial interview with Mark Breslin, and he turned around and said, "Hey, man, you know, we should do this. Like, we should do like a podcast for like Yuck Yucks." And so that's kind of how it started, man. I started interviewing, and I'm living just outside of Calgary, so for me, it was an easy thing because it was like, listen, we've got the Calgary Yuck Yucks here, and we have a rotation of comics coming in every week. So I just had to go down to the club and just interview people,
Yeah,
and
that's
it was great.
perfect.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I'll
Yeah.
just also apologize to Kira. I said Kyra at the beginning.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
No,
think
that
I made that
happens,
messake the first time I met her too.
dude.
She's like,
Yeah,
it's
my
Kira.
my Siri calls her Kyra. So
Yeah, yeah.
whenever I said, "Hey Siri, call Kira," it's always Kyra. So yeah, it happens more than you probably know.
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. We also have that kind of in common. I mean, not to the extent that you pursued it, but I actually went to school before starting comedy for like policing, and that was
Oh,
going
no
to
way.
be what I was going to do. Not really what I was going to do. It was more so doing it because my parents were like worried about me pursuing a passion. They're like, please just get a diploma, like get something, like cover yourself, don't just
Yeah.
go all in for it. But as I was in school for policing, I ended up getting into stand up and then kind of just went that way with it.
But that's the thing, man, is that like, and I don't know, how old are you?
I'm 32.
32. Okay. So anybody probably above 25 is still from that generation of parents going like, you need to go to, like, you need to have post-secondary.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, listen, 90% of people that I know have, gone on to post-secondary are never doing what they say they're going to do in post-secondary, or what they started out, unless it's like a special, unless you're like an engineer or something
sure.
like that. But I
Or
mean,
it was something that they were passionate about, right? And then they wanted to stay on that path. Like I always
exactly,
thought
exactly.
every time that I had to shake that mentality that in order to do something, you need a degree or diploma to back that up. Like
Right.
the amount of video editing jobs I've done or like YouTube consulting jobs, I never went to a single school for video editing. I
Right.
learned by YouTube. I literally just
Sure.
YouTubed how to do stuff, retained
Yeah.
it, and then built up enough experience that people wanted to hire me for those things. So it's like
That's the way to do it, man.
it's about
Absolutely.
changing that mindset. But
That's it. Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
I am fascinated by your law enforcement background because it said on your LinkedIn that you were special. What was it?
Investigator.
Special investigator. So like, what does that entail? Like that just sounds like a
So
spy, you know?
I get that a lot. People like end up looking at my LinkedIn, and it's all pretty much entertainment stuff, or I do work in
Would cool
live
too.
event
Also,
ticketing too, right?
Eventbrite,
Yeah.
and like all this. Like that's equally as cool to have on your resume. But the special
Yeah.
investigator, I was like, ooh, that's something we got to talk about.
Which is a great page stopper. Like, if you go down the list of
Yeah, yeah,
experience, and
yeah.
it's like, I've got this, I can swear on this, right? I can
Oh yeah,
swear.
of course, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I've got this like, fucking crazy, Forrest Gump like career of, a bunch of different jobs and stuff like that. I just happened to fall into. But yeah, special investigator. So, I spent, like I said, about 15 years in like law enforcement. Um, so Houston is an interesting market. So they have what's called special investigators. So you are, you're not like a police officer where you're walking the street, you're not like a beat cop,
Mm-hmm.
but you work. So a special investigator works for Department of Safety. So you basically are a specialized investigator, and you're given kind of a specialization, so to speak.
Okay.
So you're somebody who's got an extreme amount of training that goes into the job that separates you a little bit more than like a regular police officer. You would go in and do investigations, usually that are like high sensitivity to like, media, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that are going to make a big impact. Um, I happen to specialize in like child or juvenile crime. So I
Ah, okay.
specialize in homicide. I did investigations for, severe
That's
child abuse,
something
things
you
like
don't
that.
hear.
Yeah.
Juvenile homicide.
Yeah. Child homicide,
Jesus.
man. It was crazy. So I think at the end of it, and that's the thing. I mean, you work in a large city like Houston, Texas. I mean, there's probably 6 million people plus.
Yeah.
And, so my job is we worked really closely with the local police department. We worked really closely with the DA's office in Harris County. But we were given 13 counties that we were, kind of was our jurisdiction. So from all the way south to like Galveston, for
Okay.
people that know Houston, all the way north to like Huntsville, which is insane. It's an hour of, hour and a half of driving north to south of like Houston. So any given day, you could be far east, you can be, all the way west, you can be all the way north, and so anything that comes in, you're the guy, or you're the investigator that were to go out and help assist, and specialize looking for signs of child abuse, or
Mm.
any crime that involves a child is basically what you're in, and so. I specialized in that. I worked in the jail system. I worked in the prison system. I just about done everything, but investigations is really where my heart was, and of course I have a passion for helping and protecting kids, so that was the calling.
Yeah. So all those years in law enforcement, your bullshit detector is probably pretty good when it comes to speaking with people in the entertainment industry. You're
Oh
not
my
very
god,
naive when it
I
comes to
can
conversations.
that's it, man. I can usually tell if someone is leading me astray, but
Yeah, yeah. You're like,
but yeah, I've had to I've had to tone it down over the years because I can be a bit rough,
that
but yeah.
hypervigilance, I'm sure, still sticks a little bit, right? When it comes to just like your daily surroundings of
Yeah,
needing to
it's
protect
funny.
yourself, right?
Yeah, Johnny, it's funny you mentioned that because even to this day, like I'll go out and I have a real hard time in like super crowded venues, or
Mm-hmm.
like large scale festivals or like Stampede. I'm always like my wife is always like, can you just fucking relax once in a while? I'm just always like looking around for like it's funny, like I look at some people and I'm like they've got zero social like awareness of like what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. Like if you go to like a bar or like a nightclub or something like that,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like I can always see the fight happening 10 minutes before it actually breaks out. Like I can feel the tension in the room. I
Yeah.
can see who the players are. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think all that is just kind of like that shark mentality when you go into a room and you can kind of pick out who the other sharks are in the room that are, could be possibly,
Yeah.
causing a problem at some point. So yeah, I've got that detector for sure.
My girlfriend hates it when we go out because I can never have my back facing a door.
Yeah.
I was like, hell no. No, no,
I
no,
took
no.
my
I was like,
family out
honey,
for
it's in
dinner
your
the other
best
night. Yeah.
interest if I am
Yeah.
facing the door and I can see who's coming in and who's coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. We just went out for dinner last Sunday after my son's hockey game. And yeah, my wife automatically knows. She's just like, yeah, why don't you sit with your back in the booth so that you're facing the
Yeah,
door?
yeah,
But
yeah.
everything went out the window earlier that night. We were at the hockey game, and a puck, we were standing at the glass behind the goalie, and a puck went flying like right
Oh.
towards our faces. And I actually fucking ducked. My wife was just standing there. Like I didn't at one point reach for her and try to cover her. She just like, thank God the glass is, 2 inches thick.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I that just told me right there that I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not as brave as I thought I was when a puck
Your
comes
first
flying at my
instinct
wife
wasn't to
to
hold your
save
hand out
myself.
to catch that puck or yeah, diving
Exactly.
on top of her or something.
That's it. That's it.
So what I know you said like it was like podcasting that really drew you towards a world of entertainment, but what was like if there was, like was there a moment where you kind of snapped out of being like, because spending as much time as you did in law enforcement is like no small undertaking, right? Like you're beginning,
Sure.
the first part of a career, a long-term career. So it is like a lot to sacrifice in a sense to then move into a completely different field, which is often something that people are scared of doing, right? They get so used to the normal what they are doing and they want to do something else, but they're like, yeah, but then I'm starting over again. Like what was that like for you?
Yeah, and it was one of those things where, I moved to Canada, and I went back to school for at the time, I think, well, my wife works in oil and gas, and at the time there was like this massive boom going on. And so she was like, listen, you would be really good at like contract negotiations and things like that, working oil and gas. You can get anybody can get a job right now. They're just handing out jobs. I went back to school. By the time I graduated, um, like the crash happened in like oil and gas. So I had like no prospects. I had no job. Everybody was out of work in oil and gas. I was going up against guys. There was just like no way I was gonna go get hired. I was
Hmm.
going up against people who already had, 15 years experience and they were looking to, get a job again. And I just couldn't, so it was really like sink or swim. I knew I was onto something with podcasting. I just knew that the guests that I was getting, I was interviewing every week. The cool thing was that it was such a good mix of people because we had local comics that were like local headliners and comics that were touring across Canada. But then like once a month, they would also bring in like a special presentation show. So like I
Mm.
could, be interviewing a local Canadian headliner, and then the next week I could be interviewing, Greg Fitzsimmons or Brian Callen or Burt Kreischer, something
I
like
just
that. And
had
all of a sudden,
Bert's cousin on, Andrew
oh,
Hobson.
did you?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like one day,
Yeah.
you could be looking for guests that are just like your average Joe. And the next week you're like, holy shit, I just landed somebody, with a little bit more marquee status. But at the end of the day, I really wasn't making money in podcasting. I had a pretty healthy Patreon fund that, people were really kind enough to like, donate money and, kind of keep the show going and stuff like that, which was all, good, kind of like a good little side income. But, listen, after going into law enforcement for 15 years and you come out of it and you're trying to explain to your wife, like, I'm going to be a podcast, like it just doesn't
Yeah.
work. Right.
It's a tough
Same thing when,
sell.
it is, right? And the same thing when people go, "Oh, are you going to do comedy? Like, you should do comedy." And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back and start sleeping on fucking couches every week until I make it. Like, it's a grind, and it's
Mhm.
like it's not a career you just jump into. Like, you have to really be willing, just like comics, sacrifice a lot of years of your life, a lot of hustle, a lot of grind. I knew that wasn't going to happen for me. I knew I was interested in wanting to get in on the business side of comedy. I knew I wanted to be around these people because to me it was like every week I was sitting down with just somebody who was making me laugh, and like I was just so into being around funny people and just
Mhm.
having such a great energy and vibe from that I just knew I wanted to be involved in the business somehow. I didn't really know what that looked like. um and then you know I don't know if it was Kira or Mark or maybe they had a West Coast agent at the time, Kelly, who was like, "Hey, you should start promoting shows. Like, you've got really good ability to promote and do like live shows and stuff like that." I live in a smaller town outside of Calgary that's always starved for like good entertainment. I was seeing these comics work, and I was just like, "Why aren't we doing these all across the country? Like, how come every small town doesn't have a good comedy show that comes through once a month or whatever?" So I just started calling up places and I started setting up shows. I started promoting comedy shows and bringing these comics, these local headliners with me on the road. And, eventually Yuck Yucks was like, "Hey, do you want to be like our West Coast talent agent?" And I was like,
Hmm.
"Hell yeah." Like, I, want to jump into this. This is a good opportunity for me, not only to, increase the visibility of the Yuck Yucks brand by bringing it to small town and, everybody knows that brand. Obviously everybody
Yeah.
knows that,
It's
that
an
company.
easier sell to your wife too. Like, babe, it's yuck yucks.
100%. I'm like associated with a legitimate company,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
not,
yeah. A little bit easier.
that's it. And so for me, I thought, this could be a really interesting revenue stream. It could be a real interesting, step in the possibility of becoming like a live event promoter and doing comedy shows and stuff like that. And that's really kind of where the direction that I took it. And it was great, man. I had some of the best times of my life on the road with comics. And I used to do this route, this tour from like Calgary all the way to like Pender Harbor, which is like north of Vancouver Island. Like, you got to take a ferry out there and stuff. And we had these venues set up all along the way that we would stop and do. And they just became like these legendary shows that we just went and just had. But really what it was about for me was, I, there was a lot of these like small town shows happening at like pubs and bars, and comics were
Mhm.
just like treated like shit. And for me, I always envisioned it as like the better you treat the talent, the better they're going to be, the better they're going to perform, the happier they're going to be. And really, you know, what that was just like someone needed to kind of help organize, like kind of, try to draw this together and, try to make something of it. And that's really like for me how that all started was going, okay, I'm going to take a step out here and start promoting my, yuck yuck shows on the road. And I did that, man, for I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years or something like that.
Hmm.
Now, during that time, I remember I became really good friends with Kathleen McGee, who's just like to this day, I think is just one of the best female stand-up comics.
Hilarious. Yeah, absolutely.
Hilarious. Just, yeah, I mean, absolute dynamite. And I've seen her slay in so many rooms. And, we became really close friends. And she, one day she just said, "Hey, like, you should manage me." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "You should
Yeah,
manage me. Like, I need someone to like help me get my shit together and like organize and, get more gigs and, help me work on things, social media and websites and all that type of stuff. I want to do a podcast." So she had all these like ideas and things that she really wanted to work on. And what I found, like, to me, I always thought of like Ari Gold as like, the manager of like, Entourage and
yeah,
everything. I'm
yeah,
thinking like
yeah.
this grandiose life, but nobody was really doing it in Canada. Nobody was really managing comics in Canada. Like it was all still, people, I don't think were really doing a lot, or if they were, it wasn't like at that level where they were just making that much money. I think
Hmm.
you had to be a real established comedian. Like there wasn't anybody really paying attention to the ones that were kind of making their way up, right? So I could see the trajectory. I could see someone like Kathleen McGee going like, why doesn't she have like, this is a gold mine. Like, how do
Yeah.
people not foster this type of talent and bring them up? And so one of my big things was like, I started really advocating. And I told Kathleen, I said, listen, I don't know if I can do that. Like, let me pitch this to Yuck Yucks. Like, let me, write this. And I stayed up one night and I wrote this, like, it was, I don't know, man, it was like a 12-page Jerry Maguire
Yeah.
manifesto, mission statement. And it was all about how, we, I think the overall vision was like, let's not work for the fucking weekend. Let's work for the long haul. Like there's a lot of comics here that we don't just want to book for a show. Like let's really help take control of their careers and like
Hmm.
really help them with other things other than just a booking, other than just like a club booking. Like let's get them
Comedians
out.
need
Let's
that,
work on it.
man.
Yeah, like they need that.
They
And
need to be
also it
able
was
to
a lot of
focus on the craft itself. Like I credit my first manager who was just I met through a friend and he had promoted a ton of music events and he kind of said, "Hey, let's work together and do some comedy shows." And then
right,
he kind of acted as my manager for a little bit. We never officially said it. There was never anything signed, but he was my manager and he would just I credit him to all of my credits that I still use to this day, like
right,
opening for the cast of Letterkenny and like opening for the
right.
Kenny versus Spenny show. Like he did that. I would have no idea how to reach out to those people and
Exactly.
explain to them that I'm like, this comedian that's been at this for 13 years.
Right, right.
And it's like it's
And
hard to
yeah,
promote yourself.
that's it, right? And it's always going to sound better coming from somebody else. And
Exactly.
it's always going to be, which is, segue into like, where we're at now with this, with our talent management. Like our mantra is to like, you focus on being funny, we'll take care of the business, right? Like that's where
Yeah.
it should be. Back then, I don't think it was really impressed upon anybody to like nobody had the ability to do, to offload that to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw this like really interesting opportunity there with managing comics. And I thought, why don't I try this and get into it and see if I can help Kathleen and see if we can, do more things.
Yeah.
And so that didn't go over well with Yuck Yucks, right? Because they were like, I wrote this manifesto, I sent it in, and Kira basically said, "Hey, listen, like I love your thoughts on this. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. Like it's
Uh,
going to sit in the desk. Like it's just not like they're not interested in doing that. Like they're not a talent management company.
uh,
It's a chain of comedy clubs. Like
yeah.
that's listen, they got to focus on what they're good at." And so um, I said yes, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do this on my own." And I started managing Kathleen. And then it pretty much came down to like Yuck Yucks came and just said, "Hey, listen, like you got to make a decision. Are you going to be an agent or are you going to be a manager?" And I just said, I think I found what I'm passionate about. It's going to be management,
Wow.
and so we ended up, going our separate ways, and we parted somewhat amicably. Everything was fine. Um, and I think, from that day forward, I thought to myself, I'm really gonna work my ass off to try to create something special and give attention to people who I really felt could use that extra push and could use that boost and to
Hmm.
really try to be in that person's corner as much as I possibly could. And so that was the start of it. And I, just started getting into management, and I started my own company. It was Jake Hirsch Entertainment Group, which is now our kind of like live events part of the business. Um, I, just kept doing, and I probably amassed, I don't know, it was probably like 10, 15 comics I was like looking after, and some really good talent and stuff like that. And then my real first big client, I think, was Trent McClellan. And, you know, we just totally hit it off. We were buddies. And I think that we just did some really great stuff together. He was writing on This Hour Has 22 Minutes at the time.
Nice.
And he was just on the cusp of, like, I think we were like in like a year together, maybe less. And he got the call to go like on air and to be like an on air talent. And it was on the cusp of, I think Sean Majumder had just left the show, or maybe it was, I'm not quite sure. It was right around that time. It was right around the time of
Yeah.
like when Sean was leaving. And that really put me in a different category. I think it was like, okay, now we've got the talent that like can really draw and really can do big shows
Mhm.
and is working in TV. And so that was really my first big client where I was like, okay, I think I've got something here. And just through, the association and credibility and legitimacy of Trent, because I mean, Trent, he's a fucking massive talent, man. The guy
Yeah.
is just, he's a killer. That all of a sudden put me in a different, circle, in a different arena with other people that were like, hey, maybe I should reach out to this guy and ask him about management. So then that kind of gave me a lot more, I would say, juice. And then I got a lot more people reaching out and asking about management.
Nice.
It was during the pandemic. I was sitting around and, trying to get creative, and we were doing everything from like hotel balcony shows to, you know, uh, virtual shows on, Zoom and stuff like that. And I mean, it was really bottom of the barrel, man. And um, I got a call from Kira, and we had stayed friends obviously ever since I left, so we were still kind of in the same circle of people, and loosely stayed in touch and stuff like that. And she said, "Hey, listen, like Yucks is shut down during the pandemic. I've always had a real great interest in getting into management. I think a lot of comics have obviously looked at Kira as being, that person for them in comedy, is the one who's
Hmm.
always given really great advice and steered a lot of really great careers. And not only that, but just in the know, man. Like she knows everybody.
Yeah.
She's been in the business for such a long time. And she was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Hey, if we're gonna do this, let's do it. Like let's jump into this." And um, I remember calling her and telling her, like, "I'm going to give you the marquee status. I'm going to put the Williams first before Hirsch,
Hey.
so you
Nice.
know how serious I am
Yeah.
about it."
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Of course.
and that was the start of it, man. And that's been now probably, I think we've been in business now for like 3, 4 years. I think, as a
Love
talent
that.
management company.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. And that really, was the start of, I would say, probably the greatest chapter in our talent, like my talent management history was, I came to the table with some really great clients. She came to the table with her pick of clients that she wanted to sign, and already started having these conversations with. Um, but the thing about it was, it's like from day one, we always said like we wanted to keep it small, and we really wanted
Hmm.
to keep it boutique, right? We really wanted to have something special. We didn't want to have a roster of like 200 comedians. We just
Sure.
wanted a really small select few, that we could really give attention to and focus on. And that's always been, you know, I think the what's led us into, our years working together right now is just,
Hmm.
having a lot of passion for the clients in which we represent.
I love that. Now, why did you
Yeah.
choose the word heat for this episode? What does that word
Everything I
mean?
everything I fucking do, man, it's got to do with heat. That's been a big
Yeah.
theme for me forever. Acts that we represent, they got to have a level of heat with them.
Gotta bring the heat.
Got to bring the heat, man. And then heat also for me is like the fuel that really pushes people. Like you got to have a fire under your ass to be in this business. Like you
Hmm.
really, and listen, I know, like, people can sit there and say all they want, like, well, you're not a comedian. That's the fucking point, is that I'm
Yeah.
not a comedian. I don't give a fuck about going out and being funny. That's your job. My job is to make you better at what you do and to
Hmm.
give you opportunities that maybe you don't have. So for me, when I sit there and I say to somebody like, hey, there's got to be heat, there's got to, my job to motivate, and it's my job to push people out of their comfort zone. It's my job to tell people that they need to do better, or they need to focus on certain things.
Yeah.
So there's always a level of heat, whether it be in a room, whether it's in negotiations on a contract, whether it's putting a fire under someone's ass to get something done or to push themselves to get to that next level. That's for me, and Kira and I always say, like, you got to rep heat, man. You got to, it's not the steak, it's the sizzle. If someone's hot, they're hot, right? And
Yeah.
that you got to
Yeah.
capitalize on that. There's very small windows in this business that you have the ability to make something happen.
I love the
And
wrestling also comparison too, because that's what they
yeah,
say in wrestling. They use the same term, like, "Oh, he's got some heat on him." Like, it's
right,
like,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody that works in this business knows that that window is very small. I mean, you've
Hmm.
got, and I mean, listen, you can go out right now. Listen, there's 50 comics that are on my Facebook feed that I see every day that I'm like, fuck, they probably peaked about 8 or 9 years ago. You know what I mean? They probably hit that level, and now they're kind of like just maybe doing corporates, and they're kind of like, on the rotation of doing clubs and like bar shows and things like that. And maybe if they had somebody in their corner 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago, they probably maybe could have had something happen.
Yeah.
But what I see is like my warning, and it's not a knock against them. It's actually unfortunate because I think there's a lot of really talented people out there. But I think what it is like I have to be very selective about who I work with because I'm given limited opportunity. I can't do it for everybody,
Of
and I
course.
just got to place my bets, man. It's all it is. It's just you got to look at somebody and say, I really truly believe that this person has something really spectacular or very like unlike anybody else, and I really believe that they've got an opportunity to make it larger or bigger than where they are right now, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be selling out theaters, whether it be getting a TV show, somewhere along the line, they're doing something that I really believe they can capitalize on, and that's really what that business is all about. Is just trying to find those right people. I saw this quote the other day, or it wasn't even a quote actually; it was a video, and this guy said, the average lifespan is like, for the average male or whatever, is like 78 years old. It's like that's the average, point of like where you are. Listen, I'm going to be 50 next year, right? Again, and the way he broke it down was like that's 28 fucking summers that I have to make something happen, right? 28 fucking seasons. If I'm lucky, if I push it to
Yeah.
that point, if I'm fucking lucky to get to where, and I've got a list of stuff that I want to do, and I've got a very limited time to get it done. But here's what I know is that I have to be very selective and think about what are my best chances of collaborating with certain people who I feel my best chances are going to be to reach that goal or to get them to that goal,
Hmm.
right? So you really, it's, it's a shitty part of the business because I get a ton of comics, I get a ton of people that reach out, and that's the thing about this business. You can say no to somebody today, and in 2 weeks from now, they could just boom get
Yeah. Yeah.
they could hit, right. Like I'm sure at some
Sure.
point some agent or manager passed on like Matt fucking Wright. You
Oh,
know what
for
I mean?
sure. I
And
bet a
you know what I mean?
dozens and dozens of people have passed
Oh
on him
God.
and well,
Yeah, I was talking
kicking
to
themselves.
oh dude, I was talking to who was it? Jamie Kennedy. I was talking to Jamie like I don't know, it was like a month or two ago, and we were on a Zoom call, and he was telling me, he goes, Matt's name came up, and he was, hey man, like that kid was opening for me like last year for like 75 bucks
Yeah.
on a show,
And he
and now it's
posted
like you
that
can't even get
viral
a fucking
TikTok.
ticket.
He posted
Yeah,
that viral TikTok on a whim. Like he was like, ah,
yeah,
fuck it. I'll just post it.
at JFL, yeah,
Changed
for
his
a
fucking
podcast
life.
show that he was not invited to,
No,
and
he
he was
paid his
not. They
own
didn't
way to
even
get
pay.
there.
Yeah, it's
Man,
crazy, man.
everything happens for a reason. Like I 100% believe that. Like everything fucking happens for a reason. And
Definitely.
that's a prime example of like just keep going. Like every time I have an idea for a YouTube video, I get excited about the idea of making it, and then this intrusive thought that comes in and it goes, Yeah, but like, are you the person to do that? Like, it's probably
Right.
gonna suck. You probably shouldn't do that. Do you have the time to do that? All these like negative thoughts to push it down. And then when I push past that and I do it anyways, it
Right.
always ends up being like my best YouTube video.
Sure.
It's
That's
like the
it.
biggest
That's it.
one. And I'm like,
That's
well,
right.
fuck. Imagine if I just didn't do that. Like, where the fuck would
Yeah.
I be, right?
Oh,
Like,
totally, man. Totally. Yeah.
insane.
And that's, and I that it actually reminds me of another really cool one that I heard the other day. And this one was actually a quote. And I think it was like, I'm gonna, completely fuck it, but it was like your best work is or the best art that you can do is the work that you haven't started yet, right? So
Hmm.
it's like you keep pushing this thing away because, like you said, these negative feelings are there. I'm like, I shouldn't do it, I shouldn't do it. And then you do it and you're like, why the fuck didn't I do this? You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah. So
It's like I don't
long.
know what it was. I forgot what I was doing. I think somebody like was like, "Oh, dude, you gotta get into fuck was it? It was like meditation or something like that."
Hmm.
And or no, uh, a massage. It was a massage. My wife was like, "You gotta like, I got these great benefits. You should go." We get like free massages, right? And so I'm like, okay, whatever. She finally talks me into it. I go, and it's like an hour massage, but it's like the first 15 minutes. I'm just sitting there going like, why the fuck don't I do this all the time, man?
Yeah.
It's free. Like, you know what I
Like,
mean?
I'm
So it's like you don't
standing
even enjoy
taller
it.
now.
Yeah, you don't even enjoy it because you're kicking yourself in the ass for not doing it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
of
yeah,
course.
man,
Yeah.
it's a catch 22.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, listen, that's the business is that I've got to really try to find the people that inspire me. I got to find and work with people that I really believe have a shot at it, and it breaks my heart, man. I've got and it's awkward at times because
Of
people reach out and
course.
they're like, hey, I want a
Yeah.
manager, I need a manager, I'm working on this idea, and I could have already in this lifetime said no to 10 ideas that could have been
Yeah.
gold, right? There's a
Yeah.
million scripts that are left on the floor, I'm sure, in Hollywood that could have been blockbuster hits, but um it's just got to be at the right place at the right time, man, and that's just how it is.
Well, now I would also say to those comedians, like, do it yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I a long time ago stopped waiting for people to reach out to me and ask me
Right.
for things. I just asked everybody, and if they didn't get back to me, I went, oh, that's okay. I'm
Yeah,
gonna keep doing my thing. Like, no,
absolutely.
it's not gonna shut me down if oh no, I didn't get JFL New Faces. Like, am I gonna
Yeah,
quit comedy? If I do, I
yeah,
didn't really want to do comedy in the first place. You know, like, if you
yeah.
quit
No,
so
I'm
easily,
telling
it's
you, man.
like that's just the business,
No,
right?
it's funny, man. That's such a great point, Johnny, because like these are the conversations we have to have all the time, right? With like talent, it is there's so many ebbs and flows in this business where one day you're up and the next day it's like well, if I don't like we've managed comics where it's like everything is riding on like one credit where they think that if I get this one credit, it's going to open up, it's like JFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, think it's like if I get JFL, this is going to be I'm going to be Kevin Hart afterward. It's like,
Yeah,
dude, that's
yeah,
not how it happens. Like
yeah.
you got to work every fucking day harder than you worked the day before.
Uh-huh.
And you got to, every time you go up, like I tell this to, like we do these, kind of general meetings once in a while. We'll get on with talent, we'll talk. And I got to tell people, I got to remind them all the time, man. Like you said, like don't wait around for it because no one's going to just fucking call you. And if they do, this is like once in a million opportunity. Like it just doesn't happen. You
Mm-hmm.
got to like really push, really earn your stripes, and really move as far as you can and as hard as you can towards your goal. Because if you sit around and you're waiting for a phone call to come in and you're waiting for an opportunity to come, it's not going to fucking happen. That's
Mm-mm.
just how it is, right? You have
Yeah.
to be seen to be seen, right? Like you have to get out there, you got to hustle, you got to grind, and you got to do things that are uncomfortable and probably a pain in the ass. And I don't take those things lightly. Like I'll never tell comics, go sleep in a shitty hotel because I've never
Sure.
slept in a shitty hotel,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah, yeah.
I've slept in hotels like that. I've been on the road. I've done all that stuff, and it sucks. But it's a necessary evil, right? You have to get
Mm-hmm.
out there. You got to do it. I work with comics who don't want to do social media because they're like, it's fucking all
It's the
right.
dumbest shit I've
Because
ever
when you go, yeah, it's like,
heard.
listen, when I go to a club or if I talk to a booker,
Yeah.
guess what? That's the first fucking thing they're going to look at is
Oh
your
yeah.
following. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
does this person draw? Does this person sell tickets? Because club owners are in the food and drink business. They're not in the funny
Hmm.
business.
Yeah.
They want to sell tickets. They want to sell food and drink. Nowadays, if you're like a top of the line comic, you can demand a really good percentage of that
Sure.
door.
Yeah.
So you're not making a ton of money off of tickets. Like you're making your money off of food and drink
Hmm.
and customers that are coming in that door to be entertained, right? So,
Yeah.
I think comics have to remind themselves of that once in a while. And that's part of our job as talent managers is that we have to tell them
You
the
gotta humble them
uncomfortable
a little
things that
bit.
they don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's hard, man,
Yeah, of
and
course.
and on top of that, the person that you go on or that goes on right before you, praise to God that you bomb. And the
Yeah.
person that comes on after you, praise to God that they do better than you, right? Like that's the
Yeah. Yeah.
competitiveness of
Yeah.
this business, right?
Which I
I
hate
think it
that.
was
I just want like I would rather be on a show where it's just everyone's doing great.
right.
Like that to me is like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. Because now I get to show them like how good I am in my own way, like
Right.
I can watch Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad, both great
Yeah,
shows, like both
absolutely.
completely different, but it's like
Yeah,
both equally legendary in their own way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, I wish everybody would kill and everybody would just do
Sure.
amazing. And but at the end of the day, like you're gonna it's a tough business because everybody's looking at each other's grass grow next door, right? And
Yeah.
some summers you get a really great looking grass, and other ones it's like it looks like shit, man. And
Dog
but
pissed all over.
you can't focus on that. You know what I mean? You got
Yeah,
to
yeah,
focus on
yeah. Of
yours, and
course.
that's it, man. Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
Jake,
yeah.
there's a question I always ask my guests towards the end of the podcast as well. We got to wrap up here in a bit, but if you can make a phone call to a 15-year-old version of yourself, it won't affect your current timeline whatsoever, but it's just to put you in the mindset of you at 15. What advice would you give yourself?
It's a great question, man. Um, I think the one thing that everybody hears, and it's so cliche, but it's the one thing everybody hears is uh, never chase money. Find something you're passionate about and try to make a career out of it, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
money will come in the end, right? And I spent the first half of my life chasing money because you work in civil service, you're not making a ton of money. You're working overtime, you're living check to check, and I always thought it was bullshit. I always thought like, oh, you got to go, you got to chase things as much as you can, and if you really want them, you got to force it. I think I would call myself at 15 and say, hey, you know what? Um, don't chase money, man. Like that that adage, that advice is actually true. It is
Mm-hmm.
true that if you find something you're really passionate and you're good at, the money will come in time. And I think for the longest time I was so impatient about, and it's not, I'm talking about like monetary, listen, it's not all about making money, but my point is that when you stop putting so much pressure on yourself to be the best or to stand out or to do something that you really believe is going to be a game changer in your life, career
Mm-hmm.
wise or whatever, it's like take some of that fucking stress off, man. Just be yourself, find what you're really good at, that you're passionate about, and parlay that into something that you're willing to do. And they always say like if you love something, you're willing to do it for free, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And to me, it was like I didn't realize I was doing it for free because I did it for so long, like the podcast,
Yeah,
interviewing
yeah.
comedy. Like I really wasn't making money, man. But I found something I was passionate about, and I followed through with it. And now I'm seeing the rewards of it because I work with some really talented people. We've got some really exciting projects, that we've got going on. And I just couldn't be more blessed to work in a really great industry. And not even on the talent management side, but like on the live events side, like
Mm.
for like Eventbrite and Tixer and all these great companies that I've, had the fortune of working as like the head of comedy there. And what I realized, with those ones, and the advice that I would probably still dispel to myself at 15 years old is like I had no idea that was even a business, that was an industry until I got into it. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I was like, fuck, you could really, my job is to sit around and talk about comedy all day with people,
Great.
right? Comedy club owners and festivals and promoters and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Fuck, in what world, would I ever think that I would get paid to do that. You know what I
Could be the
mean?
business
So
of making people laugh. Like what?
that's it, man. And just hang out with some really great people. And
Yeah.
but you know what? It was about finding my passion, and once I did, it was, the rest has been autopilot, man. It's been great.
I love that, man. If people want to check you out, you can follow Jake on Instagram. It's at Jake Hirsch Entertainment. Go to williamshirschtalent.com to check out the full base of comedians that I'm sure you could hire for your events, or you can go check out a live event there. Also, William Hirsch Talent Management on Facebook. Anything else that you want people to check out?
Nah, I think you covered it all, man. Don't get deceived by the unruly look in my Instagram photo. I had to pick one for my meta thing, or whatever the fuck it's called. And
Yeah.
everybody teases me all the time. They're like blue seal, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I got some shots done a couple years ago. My homie did them, and I was just like, I got to go with one, so I went with that one.
Yeah.
People
Love
always
it.
say I look mad in that picture, but
Nah, you look
gotta
great, dude. Well,
gotta put it
congrats,
out there.
man.
Thanks,
Congrats
buddy.
on the talent
Thanks for
agency,
having me, man.
pursuing everything that you're pursuing. You're honestly doing a huge service to Canadian comics, and I'm happy to get you on here to kind of recognize that as well.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And like I said, I'm really honored. I obviously keep up with all the guests that you have on the show, and you've got some really great talent on here, and so yeah, it's been an absolute blast, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, let me know if anyone in your talent pool needs to promote something. They can come here. They're welcome here anytime.
My man,
We'll be
looking
in
forward
touch.
to it. I'll be reaching out.
All
Thanks,
right.
Johnny.
Have a great rest of your night.
All right, pal. You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.